Well, hello again, fellow beer lovers. I'll tell you what we've got tonight. What we have tonight is Sam Adams Chocolate Bock. And this is one of my favorite things to do is to go and pick up a good sampler 12-pack where they usually have at least two or three each of several varieties of their beers. And that's especially conducive to beer tasting, which I do a fair amount of, and probably you do too if you're watching this. So, before we imbibe in a little scrumptious beer tasting, I'll tell you a little bit about Bock beers. Okay, I think a while back, actually I know for a fact that a while back I told you about how back or around 1989 or 90, I'd gone to the Bock Beer Fest in Munich when I lived, actually it was in Augsburg, when I lived in Augsburg, Germany. It was an annual beer fest like most of them were, and they the beers were black, and they served them in liter beer mugs. I can get you one of those so you can see what that looks like from my collection here. I guess I should have been ready for that, but no harm, no foul. That's an example of a fest mug. The thing, for perspective, it's almost, without the beard, it's approximately the size of a human head. And one of those was enough to put you over the limit for a DWI in Germany. And so our first sergeant had put up a note telling us to make sure we did not drive after hanging out at the Bock Beer Fest. So I'll tell you a little bit about the history of Bock beers. Bock beers have been made since the 1300s in Germany. Those guys are the experts on beer for a reason. They've been doing it the longest, or maybe not the longest, but they've been doing it for an awful long time, and they really ran with it. And Bock beer originated in the town of Einbeck in Bavaria, which is southern Germany. And with their southern German accent, with their Bavarian, their Bayerisch, they called it Einbach. Instead of Einbeck, they called it Einbach. And in German, Einbach is a billy goat. And so there's a little bit of history on that, okay? Now, what makes this a chocolate bock, I'm not sure, because as you know, I don't read up on these beers, these individual beers before trying them for you, because I don't want to have a biased opinion going into the tasting. But I can tell you this, when it comes to chocolate porters or chocolate stouts, sometimes what makes it a chocolate porter or a chocolate stout is the fact that they've actually brewed it with chocolate, with cocoa, or added chocolate to the beer. And so it falls under the category of a flavored beer, okay? And some of those are quite delicious. One of my favorite coffee, there's a couple of my favorite beers actually have chocolate flavor added. Okay, now one of those is the Horny Goat chocolate peanut butter porter, and the other one is Surly's Coffee Bender. Actually, Coffee Bender. They've added coffee. I'm not sure it's got chocolate in it. Okay, now in this case, we'll see, but. In some cases, like in the case of Anchor Porter, that is a chocolate porter, but there's no chocolate added. The reason that they call it a chocolate porter is that there are chocolate notes coming from the malt, and so it tastes chocolatey, but there's no chocolate present. Okay, so with all that said, I'm going to go ahead and give this one a taste. I've been looking forward to this one for a few days. What a nice frothy head we got on that. Of course, I poured it in such a way as to try to release some of that, some of the carbonation into the glass. It produces a better head that way, and it also prevents indigestion. So another little tidbit for you. Now, as I said, bocks tend to be almost black, and this is no exception. You're seeing a lot of the carbonation in there, I think. Or it's, yeah. Doesn't smell chocolatey. It's a little spicy smelling. The smell isn't exactly delicious. It's a little stinky. But, let's not let that deter us. Sometimes the taste is quite different from the smell when it comes to some of that stuff. So let's give it a try. Well, I'm tasting a lot more malt than I am chocolate. Yeah, to me this tastes more like a brown ale than some of the bocks I've had. And again, I don't think it's exceptionally chocolatey. If this was a total blind taste test, I'm sure I would not have guessed that it was a chocolate variety, and I don't think I would have guessed it as a bock. I probably would have said it was a brown. Mouthfeel is lightly syrupy, pretty crisp. The finish isn't unusual, mostly throughout the everything that's permeating this beer is the maltiness. Okay, the finish is quite long, and at the very end, if you wait and evaluate the finish after a little bit longer time, and don't drink don't take successive sips rapidly in rapid succession, then some of those chocolate notes start to come out. Okay, so for this beer, I'd recommend sipping, drinking it more slowly. It could be a good dessert beer. You could have this with maybe some cheesecake, or for that matter, a double chocolate cake might be a good combination. Some of these dark beers pair well with a cigar. If you're a cigar aficionado. Well, I guess that's all I have to say about Sam Adams Chocolate Bock. I'd recommend you go ahead and try one for yourself. It's a good beer. And Sam Adams is an excellent brewery. You know, they really, I think they did a lot to help birth the whole craft beer movement, even though they are a, a, uh, a large company. They were among the first national companies that separated themselves from, you know, the yellow fizzy light beers that were out there, and stuck with it. And you know, I don't think that we would have this huge IPA revolution across the country today, where your average Joe, there are plenty of average Joes that love hoppy beers now. And that was not the case 15 years ago. That wasn't the case 10 years ago in Minnesota. But now, I mean, I bump into, sometimes there are women that I know, relatives and others that I've met that that say that they love an IPA. And that's unusual, you know, historically in the U.S. Okay, so enough said about all of that. You may have noticed a couple of my wall decorations here. This one I got from my twin sister Kathy for my birthday last year, which I really appreciated. You know, that's showing the beer boss the love. You know what I'm saying? All right, and then this was from my oldest sister, Jenny, and it says, "Beer is proof that God loves us and wants us to be happy." And the quote is attributed to Benjamin Franklin. And I'm guessing that probably was one of the many, many quotes that appeared in his Poor Farmer's, what was it? Poor Richard's Almanac. Poor Richard's Almanac. And you know, but that really was a digest. You know, as a publisher in colonial America, you know, he was gathering stuff from many, many different sources, including just adages, sayings that people would hear and say. And he put them in this almanac, and you know, over the next couple hundred years, he was attributed, I mean, all this wisdom was attributed to him like he was some kind of sage. And maybe he was, but you know, if you trace it back, a lot of these sayings actually predated him by hundreds of years, or even thousands. And in the case of this particular quote, I'm going to read it to you again. "Beer is proof that God loves us and wants us to be happy." That is suspiciously close to Psalm 104, verses 14 and 15, where it says that that God gives us wine to gladden our hearts. And you know, over the years, I've been asked by fellow Christians, "What's your life verse?" And you know, a lot of people have lots of different verses that are near and dear to their hearts, and I am no exception. But you know, in recent years, you know, half jokingly, I've thought that the next time I'm asked, you know, I might say, well, Psalm 104 verses 14 and 15. And you know, I mean, of course, I'm being a little bit snide there, I guess, you know. But the thing is, there are some believers that will say that, you know, hey, you know, Christians aren't supposed to drink at all. And you know, clearly that verse would suggest otherwise. But anyway, I did say when I started this channel that that I would occasionally possibly delve into practical theology. So you know, I wouldn't want to disappoint. So that's all for today. And please like this, and on YouTube, if you're seeing this via Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook, that's great. But please click through to YouTube and subscribe and like it on YouTube, because I'm far from the 10,000 minimum subscribers. I think that's correct. I think, well, I at least need 10,000 likes before I can possibly get a dime from the YouTube people. So support your local beer testers and support local business, and pay back your local beer taster for all the free advice. All right, that's all I ask. Like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. All right, if you got any suggestions, feel free to write in. If you want, you can send me fan mail. If you send fan mail, I promise to reciprocate either with some free beer or some free beer memorabilia. Okay? All right. Have a great evening and cheers.